there's a huge amount of destruction that happens in Leviathan Wakes, and you're now working on the second book in the series, the Expanse series. Are you finding a need to one up the level of destruction, or are you
not the level of destruction, but the scale?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. We had a lengthy conversation before starting the second book, and actually, as we've worked on the second book, that we cannot diminish the scale of the events. Mm-hmm. It has to there has to be more at risk, more threat. And we had a discussion about whether or not we would go too far. You know, do we go too far? And Daniel's answer to that was, sure, let's go too far. Let's see how far too far is. Mm-hmm. And maybe we'll know it when we get there, but let's push the envelope. Let's not limit ourselves out of the gate. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to continue building.
We named the series The Expanse. I mean, there's nothing about this series that is not pointing toward, ooh, look, big. Mm-hmm. Big. And I think that's our mandate. I think that's the mandate of this story. We've started with the events in this, and it was big. And the next time, all of that we've done, and all of the things that have happened, all of the destruction, all of the changes, those are now background. Those are now the prologue. And every time we start one of these books, everything that has happened before is the prologue.
It's sort of this Mandelbrot set that just expands and expands. The Expanse.
It really is.
That's awesome. What are some of your influences for, especially for Leviathan Wakes? Did you have a mission? Did you have a project? Did you have something that specifically inspired you? Especially in terms of genre, in terms of this particular genre.
For me, there's the two strongest influences on the world that I had initially created for a gaming environment, but then went on to become the book series. The two biggest influences for me were the book The Star's My Destination, Alfred Bester's book, one of my favorite science fiction novels of all time. And Alfred Bester wrote in a time where you could throw 8,000 novel-length ideas into a single book. He shoots past things that are book-length ideas without slowing down to catch his breath. And I love that about that book, but one of the things he does is he sets it against a backdrop of a solar system that is a well-populated solar system. People live on Mars, people live on the moon, people live on these other moons of the gas giants, and he doesn't even talk about that. It just exists. That's where people live. And that's the background against which his story happens. And Gullyfoyle is the trucker in space who gets trapped and gets pulled into events larger than himself because of larger forces in the universe moving around him. But against this backdrop of, you go to Mars and people live on Mars and you don't walk on the grass there because they're trying to terraform the planet. And it's just sort of part of the background. That idea of, I'm going to skip past the part where we did all the colonizing and I just want to live in the solar system where we've done that. We live there now. We just live there. The other thing was, and we've talked about this a lot, is the movie Alien. Mm-hmm. One of the things that everybody loves about the movie Alien, not just me, is that there is a gritty feel to the people who live and work there. Brett and Parker and all those guys who live on the Nostromo, they are, they're mechanics and they're electricians, and Ripley is a navigator, and they, Parker and Brett, they're moving around in the ship with wrenches on their belts. And there's a big room with chains hanging from the ceiling that water drips off of. Why is that there? I couldn't begin to tell you, but it looks awesome. And it sets the feel of, this is a ship where things leak, and you have to go around and tighten them down. And so Holden and his crew are my version of those guys. They live on a ship, and they carry wrenches on their belts, and sometimes things break, and you crawl around in the hull and you fix them. And that's the world that they inhabit. And it's not exceptional to them, it's any more than Peterbilt is exceptional to the guy who's driving it. It's just, that's his workspace. And so I very much have the visual of that in my head when I'm writing my scenes, this workplace. Very much the anti-Star Trek Federation, where everything's clean and perfect and the walls never have smudges on them. Yeah. That's what's in my head.
I grew up reading Arthur Clarke and Larry Niven. You know, the first science fiction short story I read was The 9 Billion Names of God. And that's, I mean, so inevitably when I go back to them, I'm sort of thinking of those books and those universes. And I'm also thinking about Firefly. I'm also thinking about Joss Whedon's series Firefly and the movie Serenity and the way, I mean, and if you, not for the world building.
Well,
not for the world building, but for the feel of people who are in this, you know, space environment. They're in a clearly science fiction milieu and have jobs.
that's what I love about this little corner of space opera, especially. The C.J. Terra Merchantr books are ones that I just love because you see the people with jobs. And, you know, I am like a lot of people, I wish we could sort of skip over this whole we have to actually colonize things before we can go out there and live there. So I love these stories where, you know, like Alien and Aliens, that the world is already there and we can just go and live and work and play in it without having all of that messy transitional
and be chased down by evil killer things.
And be chased down by huge slimy monsters that I think Leviathan Wakes. The title is Leviathan. I can't say too much more without giving it away.
But there is a big ugly.
There's a big ugly. It's awesome. So that's going to lead into my first silly question. I have a couple of silly questions. The crew of the Rocinante, which is the ship that Holden ends up captaining, and the crew of the Serenity, who wins in a bar fight?
Serenity.
Yeah. They've got more guys.
I mean, you're
They're
saying,
more
okay,
guns.
Holden tries to talk his way through any problem.
Yes.
Mal shoots people. And if
Yeah.
you have, I mean, we have Amos, who is our big bruiser. They have Jane and Zoe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think we stand a chance.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not quite as Western, so our characters aren't quite as quick to reach for their guns.
On the other hand, it could be that Holden would just buy them all a drink,
Holden would absolutely buy them all a drink.
and there might not actually be a bar fight.
And if he can talk his way out of something, he is happy to do that. Yeah.
So you have the next Expanse book that you're working on. Do you have any individual projects that you're working on that you'd like to talk about?
No end of them. Come out my ears. Yeah, I've also got I mean, where I cut my teeth was epic fantasy, and I've got an epic fantasy coming out from Orbit called The Dagger and the Coin. The first book of that is The Dragon's Path, and that's going to be coming out within a month or two of Leviathan Wakes. So they're going to hit the stand at the same time. I'm also working epic fantasy as ML in Hanover and The Black Sun's Daughter.
You mean urban fantasy?
Urban fantasy. Whatever I said.
It's
Urban fantasy. Fantasy. It's fantasy.
Do you find it hard to switch gears, or is it actually refreshing to be able to work on different things?
They're such different projects. The Venn diagram is not that much overlap. It's the voice on Leviathan Wakes and the voice on The Black Sun's Daughter and the voice on The Dagger and the Coin are very different for me. So it feels like doing different things.
I'm still in the research stages of writing my zombie book, because of course I had to write a zombie book.
Of course.
About my ambulance drivers who work in a world in which dead people turn into zombies. But I'm still gathering my facts to. Since I am going to write about a profession that actually exists, I need to make sure I know what life is like for an ambulance driver before I throw zombies into their world.
I know cops. You can do ride-alongs with cops. Is there like an ambulance?
I don't know.
program?
I'm trying to find that out.
Because I'm not sure I'd be up for that personally, but maybe you're different.
That would be a good way, because part of what I want to do is get real authenticity to the banter.
Yeah.
Because it's a job where you have partners, and I imagine that there's a very specific style of banter that goes on in the cab of an ambulance, and I need to understand that before I start writing about those people.
I have hung out with enough EMTs that they actually try to one-up each other with their stories of horrible, horrible calls. Over meals. Of course they do it over meals.
And I'm never satisfied with any amount of horror. There can always be more horror. So as horrific as ambulance driving and being an EMT is, I can only imagine it be like a little worse if the people you couldn't save became zombies.